Above the Rim, How Elgin Baylor Changed Basketball. Written by Siebert Medal winner Jen Bryant and illustrated by Coretta Scott King Award winner Frank Morrison. On a steamy summer day in 1945, a boy and his brothers played stickball in the street. There were plenty of nice parks in Washington, D.C., where people swam or played tennis, basketball, and baseball. But the child was black, and those parks were whites only. Sometimes late at night, when the city was asleep, the older boys tunneled under the padlock fences and played there anyway. But things can change in time, the child knew. Time was important. That's why his own name, Elgin, came from his father's favorite watch. He was 14 when a hoop appeared in the field down the street. And this time, there was no whites only sign. It wasn't fancy, just a place to play basketball, a fine game of skill and strategy, and of running back and forth, a flat-footed game as level as the court itself. Now Elgin and his friends could play it too. At first, they didn't have the right equipment, so they played with a tennis ball. Then someone found a volleyball. Then, finally, yes, a real basketball. Some of the older boys were very good, and they knew it. "Hey, you see that shot I made?" one bragged. That's nothing. You see that shot I blocked?" another boasted. "Oh, yeah? Well, you just try to slide by me," another challenged. Elgin heard what they said, but bragging was not his style. On the court, he let his body do the talking. In one smooth move, like a plane taking off, he would leap. Higher and higher and higher, as if pulled by some invisible wire. And just when it seemed he'd have to come down, no. He'd hang there, suspended, floating like a bird or a cloud, changing direction, shifting the ball to the other side, twisting in midair, slashing, crashing, gliding past the defense, up, up, above the rim. And with a flick of his wrist or a roll off the fingertips, he put the ball in. The way he played was so different that people stopped what they were doing and watched. "Where did he learn those moves?" the other players asked. Elgin didn't have an answer. "I don't know," he told them. "It's spontaneous." Elgin grew taller and stronger. He jumped higher and leaped longer. His friends called him Rabbit. At All Black Spring Iron High, Elgin brought his outdoor moves inside. He could score from anywhere on the floor, a hanging jumper from the corner, or a drive inside spin shot off the backboard. "He's unstoppable," the other teams complained. "Go, Rabbit, go!" the fans cried, as Elgin leaped, turned, and twisted toward the rim, or took on a defender one-on-one, gave a quick head fake, and reverse dunked over him. Whenever Elgin played, people stopped what they were doing and watched. After high school, Elgin wanted to go to college, but the D.C. colleges wanted whites only. "You should come out west," said a friend who went to the College of Idaho. So Elgin did. It rained hard those first few days, but when the skies cleared, it was time for a game. And soon, People in Idaho stopped what they were doing and watched. "No one else plays that way," the coaches declared. "Where did he learn those moves?" they wondered. Elgin didn't have an answer. "I don't know," he told them. "It's spontaneous." That winter, Elgin led his college team to victory. And that winter, far away in Alabama, a black woman named Rosa Parks sat down on a city bus and refused to give up her seat to a white man. That was a victory, too. When people learned about Rosa on the news, they stopped what they were doing and watched. Later, Elgin transferred to Seattle, where he led his team to the 1958 College Championship Finals. The newspapers wrote a lot about Elgin. They also wrote about the courage of the first black students in Arkansas to sit down in an all-white classroom. All across the country, people stopped what they were doing and watched. In 1958, the Minneapolis Lakers chose Elgin Baylor first out of all the college players in the nation. Elgin "Rabbit" Baylor was now a professional athlete. But in those days, being in the NBA was not like it is today. Fans flocked to watch Major League Baseball. But with only 8 teams, the NBA had a hard time selling tickets. The players didn't make much money. They traveled long distances in loud, clickety-clack trains and slept leaning over in their seats, their long legs jammed underneath. Sometimes they flew in made-over cargo planes. They played back-to-back nights and washed their uniforms in hotel bathrooms. They slept on beds that were too short. They played when they were injured or sick. Even so, Elgin played as hard as he could, and so did his Lakers teammates. Meanwhile, another team gathered in the basement of a church in Wichita, Kansas. They practiced sitting down and not fighting back, even if they were bullied and harassed. Later, they sat down at a whites-only lunch counter until they were served food. But change came slower elsewhere. That winter in West Virginia, when the Lakers needed a place to stay overnight, every hotel said, "Whites only." So Elgin and his teammates said, "No thanks." The whole team checked into Edna's guest house, where anyone was welcome. They were hungry. Where could they eat? Downtown, all the nice restaurants were whites only. Elgin bought some cold food at the bus station and ate in his room. That night, as the other players suited up and walked onto the court, Elgin sat down before the crowd, without a uniform. "Why isn't Elgin Baylor out there?" the reporters asked. "It's not fair," the fans complained. "We paid to watch the whole team." But his coach and his teammates understood. They were with him at the hotel. They knew he'd been turned away at restaurants. "I am a human being," Elgin told them, "and I want to be treated like one. Sometimes you have to sit down to stand up," and that's what Elgin did. The fans noticed, the newspapers noticed, and the NBA commissioner noticed. A few weeks later, he made a new rule. No NBA teams would stay in a hotel or eat in a restaurant that practiced discrimination. Elgin had already changed the way basketball was played. Now, by sitting down and not playing, he helped change things off the court, too. In 1959, Elgin was voted NBA Rookie of the Year. 2 years later, The Lakers moved to Los Angeles, California, where famous people seemed to be everywhere. Fame changed people, Elgin knew. But it didn't change Elgin. In one smooth move, like a plane taking off, he leaped. Higher and higher and higher, as if pulled by some invisible wire. And just when it seemed he'd have to come down, no. He'd hang there, suspended, floating like a bird or a cloud, changing direction, shifting the ball to the other side, twisting in midair, slashing, crashing, gliding past the defense, up, up, above the rim. And with a flick of his wrist or a roll off the fingertips, he put the ball in. Wherever Elgin played, people stopped what they were doing and watched.